What's up, my dear language learning master? And welcome to a new episode of the Language Input Podcast, in which, as you know, I'm going to talk about different topics related to language learning, and I'm going to challenge common beliefs and misconceptions that I believe are hurting so many people around the world that, really want to learn foreign languages, but they get frustrated because of the traditional grammar approach and because of these beliefs and misconceptions. All right, and well, as usual, before getting started with today's topic, I want to remind you that if you're listening to this on YouTube or any platform where you can leave your messages, feel free to do so and, give me your opinion on today's specific topic, on the podcast in general, any question, suggestion you may have when it comes to the language learning process, feel free to go ahead and leave your comment down below, because I'll be more than happy to help you out, and you'll be giving me ideas for future episodes as well, as usual. So yeah, thank you in advance for that, and let's get into today's topic. And if this is the first episode you've listened to on this podcast, in the very first episode I talked about whether grammar study is actually necessary in order to learn a language, right? And if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can actually find it somewhere up here, so you can go back and listen to that episode. And if you're listening to this on, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts, just go to the first episode of this podcast, okay? But today I want to talk about a similar topic, but I want to talk about the same topic, but I want to take it a step further. And today I'm not going to talk about whether grammar study is necessary or not. And spoiler alert, we already know it's not. But like I said, I'm going to take it a step further, and my question is grammar study actually counterintuitive or counterproductive, or does it even get in the way of a language learner? All right. And before explaining what I think about this topic, as usual, let me be clear on this. Like when I talked about whether grammar study was necessary or not, I was talking about my opinion, but backed up by a lot of research that's been done in this field. Okay, but what I'm gonna talk about today is purely my opinion. Okay, so there's no experiment or research study to back it up. All right, it's just my feeling as a language learner, as a language student, and as my experience from what I see in my students, in myself, and so on. All right. So I want to be clear on that. Like, this is just my opinion, my perspective, or my feeling. All right. And, getting started with today's topic, finally, I actually believe that not only is grammar study not necessary, but I'm starting to believe that it does get in the way. So it can actually have some negative impact on your learning. So, they just adding insult to injury, right? Like, not only does it not help, but it may also have some negative consequences for you, all right? And let me explain why I think so, all right? So recently I've been noticing that this might be due to the language itself, but actually I'm gonna try to compare two pretty similar languages, all right? And today I'm going to talk about my experience with Italian and Portuguese, all right? And I started learning Portuguese. I started learning Italian in 2017, the beginning of 2017, and I started learning Portuguese 2 years prior, okay? So 2015. And since I started learning Italian, I'm pretty much getting exposed to both languages at a similar rate. So I'm getting exposed to, series, books, and many different resources on a pretty similar I mean, like on a pretty similar amount of time daily, all right? Like, I don't know, half an hour, 25 minutes, 40 minutes, it depends, but pretty similar, all right? And what I've realized, and that's why at the beginning of the podcast, I talked about, I mean, like just a minute ago, I talked about the fact that I don't know if this is due to the language itself, but I believe both Portuguese and Italian are somewhat related to my native language, Spanish, all right? And they both come from Latin, so I don't think there's that much of a difference between them when it comes to how much I can understand as a Spanish native speaker and so on, all right? And what I've realized is, because when I started studying Portuguese in 2015, I didn't know yet about all of this, about how languages are actually acquired. I did study some grammar when it comes to Portuguese, all right? But when I started learning Italian, I already knew about all this. I had just started my project, and I had done a lot of research and so on. And I had already attended a conference on language teaching with this approach, of course. So you can imagine that I haven't wasted a single minute of my time learning the grammar rules, memorizing vocabulary lists, and so on when it comes to Italian, right? And despite having started 2 years later, so like the amount of time that I've spent exposing myself to Portuguese is higher than that of Italian. I recently realized that I feel more fluent in Italian, like when I'm speaking with my Italian friends here, as opposed to speaking some Portuguese. Because for instance, I'm playing football here and I'm playing with some people from Angola, and they speak Portuguese, and I can understand pretty much 100% of both, like both Portuguese and Italian. But when it comes to speaking, I've noticed that I feel kind of more free when it comes to Italian, because there's no grammar study behind it. So all I have, I'm just quote unquote, all I have to rely on is my natural subconscious acquisition of the language, right? What feels right to me in my mind after listening to Italian. And because of it, I'm not thinking about what I'm gonna say next, as opposed to Portuguese. And when it comes to Portuguese, 90% or 95% of what I've done to learn Portuguese has been the right things, okay? But because I did study some grammar beforehand, sometimes I notice that when I'm about to say something, I stop to kind of double check in my brain if what I'm gonna say is right or not, right? Because of that grammar study that I did for a while, all right? So that's the main reason why I believe that grammar study does actually get in the way of language learning, because when you haven't done any grammar study, like I talked about with Italian, like there's no conscious knowledge to lean on. Let's put it that way, to lean on when I'm about to speak, or when when I can find the words, So if I'm gonna speak Italian, if the words come to my mind, I just go ahead and say them, right? But if they don't, I don't, because I haven't acquired them yet, right? It's just part of the process. But if you've studied grammar before, like in Portuguese, first of all, when I'm about to speak, even if my first natural reaction is to actually use the words that I've acquired the right way, many times I find myself double checking in my brain, like I said, to sort of relate to those language rules, to those grammar rules that I learned consciously beforehand, to kind of double check if it's right or not. Does it make sense? Hope it does. And and then even when I don't really know how to express something, when you have that sort of prior conscious knowledge, you're trying to build how to put it into words. You're trying to build sentences from from that grammar knowledge that don't make really a lot of sense. I don't really know how to explain this part, but the main idea is that conscious grammar knowledge acts as a sort of, Stephen Krashen calls it monitor, right? So it's like something you got in your mind, your brain, that's going to stop you from speaking right before you're about to, because it wants to make sure that what you're going to say is right, is grammatically correct, right? Hope it makes sense. I'm sure you felt this with, if you're an English native speaker and you've been learning Spanish or any other language, I'm sure you felt that when it comes to a different language, if you've studied grammar, that you're about to say something, and just like a second or two before you're about to say it, you kind of stop yourself and double check if what you're going to say is right or not. Can you relate to that? Did it happen to you before? I'm sure it did. If you learn through the traditional grammar approach, I'm sure it did, and I'm sure everyone can relate to that. All right. And so the bottom line is, I already talked about in the first episode. I already talked about in the first episode about the fact that we don't need to consciously learn the grammar rules in order to speak a language, right? Because many times, even after saying something, or even after making a grammar mistake in a foreign language, right away we realize that we made a mistake. So we consciously knew the rule, but that didn't help us, or that didn't prevent us from making a mistake, or that didn't help us get it the right way, right? Because consciously knowing something and being able to use it in real life, in a real-time conversation, are two completely different things, all right? So that's the first part. But then, like I said, this is just my opinion, my feeling when I'm speaking different languages, but I feel like conscious grammar study does actually get in the way, because you're like I said, you're double checking, you're thinking things through when you're gonna speak, as opposed to feeling free or going the natural way, right? And there's a lot of beliefs into that as well. Not just that it gets in the way in that regard, but also like error correction, like I talked about in the previous episode as well. Because our errors have been corrected through our entire education life, put it that way. Little by little, we become afraid of speaking because we're afraid of making mistakes, right? I explained that in more depth in the previous episode that I talked about. And because of it, we're afraid to make mistakes, right? And because we want to be grammatically correct, like 100% grammatically correct, we're always relying on that conscious knowledge to sort of double check, like I said, in order to make sure that we're saying it the right way, that we're not making any mistake, that we're sounding as close as native as possible, right? And once again, I do understand that the fact that you want to sound as native like as possible. I do myself as well, obviously, but once again, it's all about the process, how we learn our native languages, a process that worked 100% of the time. Yeah. So the thing is, I perfectly understand you wanting to be super fluent, to sound as native-like as possible, but you don't need to consciously study grammar in order to achieve that. Like we've seen in previous episode, what you need to do is just keep getting exposed to the language in situations in which you understand the message. So keep getting exposed to comprehensible input in the language. That's the key to the entire process, and I'll repeat it over and over again. That's all you need to do. Get exposed to comprehensible input, and you'll be fine. The process will be working. That's all you need to worry about. Finding resources, comprehensible resources for you to keep listening and reading the language. That's it. Okay? So, well, this is today's episode, and that's the main idea that I wanted to convey today. And yeah, please let me know in the comment section below whether you can relate to this situation that I talked about or not, whether you also feel that way when you're about to speak in a foreign language, right? In which you had some traditional grammar classes, or and so well, thank you once again for coming this far in this episode, and I hope you found it useful, and feel free to leave your comments down below like I said, and I'll see you in the next episode, my dear language learning master. So be well and have a good day wherever you might be. Bye bye, my friend. Ciao.